Jeffrey Marilyn Johns. I gotta say, I didn't think you had it in you, but you kind of did. Let's talk about that. Hey, welcome to 9 Panel Grid. This week we've seen robotic deceptions, worlds within worlds, and the stepping stones to a new connected universe. But we're going to kick things off this week with Batman number 146, written by Chip Zdarsky, with artwork by Jorge Jimenez. The pacing of this book is just fantastic. It is just like an action movie cranked up to 11 with it's just hitting on all cylinders at all times. And the action set pieces laid out by Jorge Jimenez are just fantastic. It keeps things breezy, it keeps things light, and it keeps things action packed and with the momentum just like continuously moving forward over and over. Now, this issue continues Zdarsky's exploration with the duality between Bruce the Man and Batman the Vigilante. We see the manipulation and the maniacal ways that Failsafe is kind of just picking apart every single person in the Bat family and also the extended Bat family with the Justice League. The interactions that he has specifically with Superman are well deserved, well earned, and it really just goes to show how deeply ingrained Zur-En-Arrh was truly in Bruce's psyche. It was a fantastic issue. It was really, really fun. I'm loving what Zdarsky is doing. It's kind of the antithesis between Detective Comics and Batman. This is gigantic moronic splendor at its very, very best. So, Batman 146, what did you think? Okay, let's talk about Doctor Strange number 14, written by Jed MacKay, with artwork by Pasquale Ferry. This story has been really fantastic. This is the second part of a two-part arc where it's Doctor Strange and the Secret Defenders doing battle within a Dungeons and Dragons like world. The artwork on this is really fantastic. Then the nature of everything that being in within this world here has led to really trippy and psychedelic panel work that Ferry has done really, really great with. He's not so structured and gridded within his panel work that he's using, but more importantly, Heather Moore's color on this book in particular has really just like flown. It has been fantastic. I would have appreciated seeing this in black and white, but seeing it in color is truly the visual that you would need to see this book in to really see it fleshed out in the best way possible. Now, McKay's one and done approach on this entire series has been really fantastic. It's been really refreshing, especially for me being a casual Doctor Strange fan. I know the big beats of his history, but I can't say that I know everything like the back of my hand. So, this has been truly one of the series where you feel comfortable jumping in at any point whatsoever. You don't need to know everything possible here, and it really makes it makes it easy for a casual reader to become a fan of this character and his supporting cast. Now, with that being said, with every issue being a one and done kind of story, McKay's done a really fantastic job of laying little puzzle pieces throughout each issue to make sure that the overarching story that we're definitely going to be leading to is not left behind. You're seeing bits and pieces of things that are happening in the background that I'm sure are going to culminate into this big overarching story and possibly an end place for his arc on Doctor Strange altogether. I can't wait to see it. I think it's going to be a really, really awesome culmination of everything that he's shown us here. But Doctor Strange number 14, what did you think? Next up, we have Immortal Thor number 9, written by Al Ewing with artwork by Ibram Roberson. Now, I was really, really excited to see Roberson continue on this book here. I believe that he was the fill, well, I shouldn't say fill-in, but kind of the fill-in artist from the last issue here, and he's carried over into this issue as well. And his artwork is just fantastic. I love the way that he's playing with the panel work on this, specifically his use of the white space that's left over here. It really makes the images that he has pop as opposed to just a lacking a background. They're used intentionally. It's with purpose, and it's really good page work through and through. Now, Ewing's time at Marvel specifically, not just this book, but Marvel, has been really spent on developing almost his own corner of the universe and his narration and the story that he wants to tell. Every single book that he's been involved with is just interweaving things over and over and over. And with the title of this being Immortal Thor, it's clear cut that this is going to be definitely taking pieces and playing with characters from his Immortal Hulk run, and kind of fleshing those out even more and continuing the story that didn't end in that previous book. Um, This issue in particular feels like a beginning of a new exploration in the pages of Thor. It's just that there's something going on here that it's going to take a step out of the traditional comic book and maybe look at things in a more meta aspect. It feels particularly relevant as well, considering the fact that there's been a lot of well-known characters recently that have become part of the public domain that have crossed over and started being used in places and by creators that you wouldn't necessarily expect. With Thor being a creature of mythology, Norse mythology, it's always been something that's kind of been in the back of everyone's head as they read it. And there's kind of the mythological Thor, and then there's the Marvel Thor. And I think they're going to start playing with that maybe just a little bit more and really looking at the meta aspect of the comic versus the mythology. I'm super excited to see it. I'm here for it. I'm a big Ewing fan. Immortal Thor #9. Let me know what your thoughts are. All right, the last book from Marvel this week, we're going to talk about X-Men #33, written by Jerry Duggan with artwork by Joshua Cassara. Now, this book is kind of filled with heavy-handed callbacks in the writing. Jerry Duggan knows exactly what we're trying to bring forward here. We're at the end of the Krakoan era. We're starting to kind of really pick up the pace here and get to the end game because we know what's coming within a matter of months here. And he's calling back to big story arcs, particularly the Hellfire saga. And you can definitely tell he's having fun with that. And I think when Jerry Duggan is having fun on a book, he's probably at the best writer that he could possibly be. There are times when he can get bogged down, and if he's not, you could just tell when he's not having fun in a book. But this goes to show he can fire on all cylinders. The thing that really drives this book, though, is having Joshua Cassara back on art duties. His line work is kinetic, it's fast, it's flowing. I love the way that he uses panels and specifically the automatopoeias and building that into the page layouts here. When there's an explosion, you feel it, right? When there's a slashing of Wolverine's claws, you feel it. It keeps everything bright and flowing. It's super energetic. One of probably more energetic than any other book that I've read this week here. It's just a really enjoyable comic book. I mean, there's nothing spectacular that happens in here. We're not seeing the continuation of anything necessarily, so much as just kind of like one small piece in a larger puzzle of the end game here. But with that being said, I was along for the ride. It was fun. It was breezy. X-Men #33. What are you thinking? Moving on to indie books this week, let's talk about The One Hand #3, written by Ram V with artwork by Lawrence Campbell. This book finally feels like the time period it takes place in is relevant. We saw bits and pieces of the futuristic aspects of the world previously, but it didn't feel like it was relevant so much as it was a kind of forced into the story just to remind you, oh, hey, by the way, this isn't present day, it's in the future. This finally starts spelling things out as to why it's important that these things are taking place when they're taking place. Now, the story in general here, it's a real classic, you're off the case kind of police story. His badge and gun are taken away. The main character, for all intents and purposes, shouldn't be on the case anymore. We're like one classic Lethal Weapon line away from Danny Glover here from making him that character. But what we're seeing is that some of the bots that are used in the future for work services, they are possibly playing a part in the murder roles that are happening here. Now, the interconnection between this and the Six Fingers is starting to get really interesting because this issue is really taking us down a path where it's kind of trying to tell us maybe these robots have a part to play in all of the things that are happening here. Whereas the Six Fingers, we haven't gotten that yet, but it really makes you start to question what the nature of the workings of the main character in that book are. Is it possible maybe these robots don't understand that they are robots? It's really playing with some really cool ideas here that we kind of see their sci-fi tropiness, all around here. It's kind of a Blade Runner-esque kind of look on things. But it's kind of cool because we're seeing these converging stories really close in on one another, and I think we're going to get to the point here very quickly where it's overlapping on one another here, and we're starting to pick up the pace very quickly. It was a really fun book. It's been a really fun book from the beginning of the series. I love the interactions, the dark grittiness of the artwork. It really just pulls you in. It makes you want to read it over and over. One Hand #3. Let me know what you're thinking. All right, I alluded to it at the very beginning, but let's jump into the new universe created by a litany of people on the Ghost Machine team. Let's start off with Geiger #1, written by Jeff Johns with artwork by Gary Frank. First and foremost, all the books they put out this week have been extraordinarily high quality. The page quality has been top notch, cardstock covers, the printing, the coloring, everything from top to bottom. You can tell that there was love and care put into every single one of these books. Now, with Geiger 1 specifically, I was really worried. I have not been a Jeff Johns fan in the past. I kind of tried to jump into his work previously. I fell off with Blackest Night. That didn't do anything for me, and with the nature of some of his books being really divisive in the past, it hasn't given me an avenue to jump back in and really kind of look at his work again. Ghost Machine has given me that excuse, and I gotta say, it has been a breath of fresh air. It's been fantastic, and I'm really happy that I did that. Um, Geiger #1 feels comic booky in the best way possible. It feels like a classic comic written with newer standards. The story is just. I was really afraid that I wasn't going to be able to jump into it, seeing that I hadn't read the previous Geiger work. And in fact, I had reached out to friends that had read it, and I was like, "What should I do? What order should I do this in? Is this going to be homework for this? I'm really not down for that." And they said, "Yeah, you might want to get the biggest bang for your buck here." I decided to go in fresh because I feel like there's a lot of other people that are going to be doing the same. And I have to say, I'm kind of excited that I did that because I was able to jump right into this issue with no background information besides the big story beats, basically, of our main character. He gets powers, his family has passed away, and he's looking for, you know, a meaning in life, essentially. So, with that being said, I jumped into this issue with only that background knowledge, and I was able to pick up, the pieces right then and there. I think that Johns did a really good way of crafting this in a way that didn't tell you everything from the previous stories, but it told you just enough to kind of keep you in play and kind of catch you up on everything that you need and jumpstart you right into where we're going to be going with this story. The artwork by Gary Frank is to the same level that you would expect Gary Frank's artwork to be. He has a real, again, just like the way that the writing felt classic and comic booky. I mean, Gary Frank's artwork feels classic and comic booky from an era from maybe like the late 80s, early 90s, not in a Image Founders kind of way, almost, but in a classic comic book kind of way, where he brings a sense of realism, but he's not afraid to deliver a lot of heavy line work, a lot of cross hatching, and it was appreciated. I mean, the sense of realism he brings to the book while incorporating that comic booky over exaggerated nature is really appreciated. I really, really dug it. The color work in here was fantastic, especially, whenever the radioactive man, whenever Geiger has to activate his powers and the panels just overflow with this bright, radiant green. It drew you in. It was an amazing, amazing first issue here. I'm going to be definitely reading the Ghost Machine issues moving forward here, but Geiger #1, especially if you jumped in new, let me know what you're thinking. Next up from the Ghost Machine imprint, we have Redcoat #1, written again by Jeff Johns with artwork by Brian Hitch. First and foremost, I have to say, I'm so pleased to see Brian Hitch producing artwork to this quality. We've seen him recently work on things like Venom, and I have to say, like, when you have work from Brian Hitch that we've previously seen, like things from the Ultimates, we know the level of artwork he can produce. And recently, I feel like it wasn't up to that same standard that we are accustomed to seeing from him. Now, with Redcoat #1, though, man, oh man, this is definitely Brian Hitch doing Brian Hitch things. Everything is just fantastic. The line work is great. The inking has the thick lines here. It's moving forward. It's kinetic. It's awesome. There's no other way that I can put it. Now, the concept of this story is just buck wild, and it's probably the most fun book that I read this week. The elevator pitch, I have to say, on this is kind of like, what if Peter Quill from the MCU was born in the 1800s and gained immortality? That's the best way I can put this. Our main character is so haphazard and so not heroic by any means possible, that it makes every interaction that he has with every character special and unique and really, really fun. Now, those interactions with those characters specifically are just extraordinary. It had a smile on my face page after page after page, whether it's him stealing immortality from Benjamin Franklin or him getting saved, quote unquote, by Albert Einstein. This book is just wild. It's playing with historical events that are super fun. I can't wait to see where I go from this. This was definitely a top comic of the week contender, and it was definitely my favorite of the Ghost Machine books. So, Red Coat number one, let me know your thoughts. All right, let's talk Rook Exodus number one, written by Jeff Johns with artwork by Jason Fabok. Now, this has been a highly touted book. This takes place out of the continuity of the Geiger universe that had been set up, and this is kind of its own sole thing. I've heard a lot of really fantastic things about this issue, and I feel like they delivered for sure. It sets up a great world that we're going to be able to play in quite a bit. It's a super fun introductory view of what's going to happen basically if humanity has to leave Earth and inhabit a new world. But just like humanity sometimes does, things don't go all that well, and maybe they didn't do the things that they were supposed to do. Our main character is trying to survive the best that he can within this world, and it's really fun because the main characters that we've been shown so far, there's part of the nature of what they're doing is that they have interactions with the animals within this world, which mimic the same things that we have here on Earth. So Rook has a helmet which lets him communicate and command a bunch of crows basically that follow along with him. We see other characters that do the same thing with pigs, and I'm sure there's like a whole litany of animals that people are going to be doing this with. The artwork on here is the same level that you would expect from Jason Fabok. It's clean, it's concise. You can definitely see that not only with this issue, but everything that Ghost Machine has put out, similar to how we see DC and Marvel kind of incorporating artists that have a similar style. You can definitely see that Jason Fabok is part of the house style within Ghost Machine. And really, could you pick a better artist to have a house style based on? It's great. It's fantastic. There's a lot of detailed work that comes into this when our main character is exploring the city and navigating this world of this decaying planet that now he is going to have to figure out whether he needs to learn how to survive here long term or leave. There's no detail that's missed. There's nothing blurry. There's no clothespin characters in the background that are about this big here. Every detail is laid out here and it's clean. Um, with that being said, the only thing I would say is that it kind of leaves a bigger issue, I should say. This leaves a little bit of meat on the bone here. I would have liked to see the story played out a little bit more. We do get to see some views of the past and why our main character made the choice to even leave Earth and come to this new world, because there is a choice. But I thought maybe we could have seen just a little bit more with this being an exercised issue. What I will say though is that I do appreciate the quality of this book and the price point that they put it out at. I feel you definitely do get every single cent out of this book. So kudos to you guys. You did fantastic there. I would have just liked a little bit more of the story progression to kind of give me that hook to kind of stay on here, with the exception of the awesome action beats that we've seen. So with that being said, Rook Exodus, what are you thinking? All right, next up from Image in the Giant Generator imprint, let's talk about The Sacrificers number 7, written by Rick Remender with artwork by Max Fiumara. Now, this is the first issue back from a slight little hiatus between arcs, and this has been a really interesting issue to jump back into. The first arc really focused on these characters, the sacrificers, which really turn into the sacrificees, that are fueling the gods in this world and making sure that they can remain youthful and remain in places of power, as opposed to maybe dying off and letting new gods take over. This arc in particular, though, it looks like it's going to be focusing more on these gods. And the story itself, much like what Moon speaks to, is the transformative nature of experience. There's a lot of intrigue. There's definitely disappointment and questioning in this story. You're seeing the the gods actually take action based on the people who are devout to them, and they're really, coming into play. But you're seeing inner turmoil between those gods as well, and you're seeing maybe the people that are worshiping these gods and the gods themselves, maybe they're not so different from one another. There's a lot of clashing of personalities, clashing of heads, and you're seeing decisions being made that you wouldn't expect from a higher power. Maybe these higher powers, while they are powerful, aren't any higher than the rest of us, basically. The only downside I really have with this issue is the dull color palette that's been used here. And now, granted, it was used in a way that was appropriate for the story, but every page felt very gray and very dull. And again, it was appropriate, but it didn't make for an exciting experience visually. Um, yeah, it could have played a little bit more with that kind of stuff, I feel. With that being said, I do think it is going to be a very intriguing continuation of the story, and I really want to see what they do with these gods and these characters. I know that Rick Remender can definitely tell and weave a compelling story, especially looking at people in places of power. So, The Sacrificers #7. Let me know what you're thinking. Okay, with my runner up this week, let's talk about Traveling to Mars #11, written by Mark Russell with artwork by Roberto Melli. Now, I have to be honest, I jumped on this series a little bit late, but I was able to get caught up here. And when I say I was able to get caught up, I'm pretty sure that I read issues 1 through 10 in a matter of maybe a day or two. This story really pulls you in. And this being the culmination of everything, this being the ending of the story, I gotta say, it took me on an emotional roller coaster. Um, it took me a couple of reads actually to really start picking up everything that Mark Russell was trying to say in this book as well. From issue 1 through 10, we really see a man coming to grips with everything that's happened in his life and the choices, or maybe it's not so much the choices he made, but the choices he didn't make that had the biggest impact on his life. And we've seen an exploration through that. And it really felt like issue 10 could have been the last issue. There's been a lot of resolution that's taken place. He's spoken with people that he didn't think he was going to get to speak to again, being that his mission definitely had an end game with him having terminal cancer and there being no return route from him traveling to Mars. But what we've found is that it's not so much a realization of the things that you've done with your life and the choices that you made. It's a realization that you can always make new choices and you can always change the outcome of what you are leaving this life. Uh, it was an extraordinarily emotional end game, and I didn't pick up on it with the first time I read it, and I think I missed a lot of things. And I was so happy that I went back and reread it because I really came to that realization that these aren't just actions that are taking place. This is the main character making the choices that he wished he made earlier in life that would have led to a more fulfilling, enriched life. It was showing the Joseph Campbellian journey. This is the main character coming home. I mean, very very figuratively, ashes to ashes, dust to dust kind of way, coming home and having changed. Traveling to Mars was an incredible read from start to finish. The end cap was absolutely brilliant. Traveling to Mars #11. Let me know what you were thinking. Okay, with this week's top comic of the week, let's talk Kaya #17, written and drawn by Wes Craig. This was an awesome action packed issue. There's been a lot of breezy action packed stories throughout the entirety of this week, but I gotta say, this one took the cake. The majority of this story actually only takes place within maybe a minute, maybe two, but every single panel of those minute and a half, 2 minutes is just filled with suspense, with terror, with action. We see a lot of different things. Basically, this is a rescue mission issue. Our main character, Kaya, is trying her best to save her brother, and part of that requires her to go find medicine that puts her into extraordinarily tumultuous experiences. All the while, her brother Jin is having these hallucinations based on the magic that he's been using. Magic always comes with a cost. Magic always definitely has a price, and he's seeing that maybe some of the things that he has the choices to do definitely come from a darker place. It's making him a very interesting character, though, and I'm so happy to see that he's growing into this prophetic thing that we are have been told throughout the series that he's going to encapsulate. Now, Wes Craig is definitely doing fun things on both the writing and the art, but the artwork specifically, it is just so vibrant. It's just absolutely taking every learning tool from Jack Kirby's toolbox and he's putting it into play. Everything is definitely portrayed at its most action packed. You know, every arc of the arm is definitely pulled back, ready to strike. Every stroke of a character swimming is definitely like that last desperate stroke, trying to get to the top of the water to gasp for breath. It makes everything seriously a edge of your seat kind of experience. Now, the other thing that's really playing into this is the colors by Jason Wordie. When you're in the depths of the ocean, it's dark, it's briny, it's difficult to see, but not in a bad way. Whereas the colors are just dark and black, but it's really playing off of the nature of everything that's going around. When Jin is struggling with the more quote unquote demonic nature of the magic he's using, everything is just filled with fiery reds and oranges. It just really goes to really play out everything that you're reading on the page here. I mean, you can look at this and not have any words in this issue whatsoever and still know exactly what's happening. Speaking of which, this is probably the breeziest read of the week, too, being that, I mean, you could probably count on two hands here how many word balloons show up in this issue. But that goes to show the storytelling quality that Wes Craig brings to this book. He doesn't need 1,000 words to tell you the story that he needs to tell. He's effective. His approach is appreciated. He's not going to put his ego above the story that needs to be told. So, with that being said, Kaya number 17, my top comic of the week. Let me know what your thoughts are. So that's what I've got for you this week. But I'm curious, what did you read and what were your thoughts? We're going to forego the YouTube end cap of most videos here, and I'm just going to leave you with one final thought, which is read more comics. Thanks. Talk to you later.